The vote on Issue 2, the controversial and confusing Drug Price Relief Act, was almost the opposite of the results for the issue above it. 79% of voters rejected Issue 2, which stirred a fight over the rising cost of drugs and if the proposal would actually bring those costs down. And it became the most expensive ballot campaign in Ohio history. Statehouse correspondent Andy Chow reports, even with all the money and debate, nothing about the drug industry in Ohio will change as a result of the vote.
The major players behind the No on Issue 2 campaign say the giant coalition of organizations that opposed the ballot measure, such as doctors, nurses, and pharmacy groups, played a huge role in defeating it.
People trust those organizations, and if every expert who had looked at this, or virtually every expert who looked at this, said it was a bad idea, I think that was enough for most voters in Ohio.
Opponents say they had a tough hill to climb. They had to overcome what seemed like a simple sell with the so-called Drug Price Relief Act. People want to pay less for prescription drugs. But Dale Butland, spokesperson for the No side, says they had a consistent message that the plan forcing the state to pay less for drugs would result in higher prices for the 2/3 of Ohioans who aren't on state programs. And they spent millions of dollars on these commercials that played nonstop around the state to hammer that point home. So supporters of Issue 2 say there's an easier explanation for how the no vote won: money.
The money was a tremendous fog for voters, unfortunately. And keep in mind, that $75 million are all from excess profits these drug companies make from overcharging and price gouging patients.
Confusing seemed to be the word used over and over again to describe Issue 2. Some even suggested that when voters are confused about a ballot issue, they tend to vote no. But Butland strongly rejects that claim.
I think that's insulting. Ohio voters are perfectly capable of understanding issues and making up their own mind.
Nearly 80% of voters rejected Issue 2. Kurt Steiner managed the opposition's campaign. He says that overwhelming win tells him that voters knew what they were doing.
When you have numbers like this, there's not a whole lot of confusion. Very much, we could see in our own internal polling that most people that were voting no were definitely voting no, which is a clear sign that they understand what's on the ballot, and they didn't like it.
Willard counters that the historic amount of money raised and spent against Issue 2 was used to convince people to, in his words, vote against their own interests.
Tonight solves nothing when it comes to the out-of-control drug prices that people have to deal with every day in their lives. That's what this was about. We want to lower drug prices, and we're going to take this to other states, and we will eventually be victorious.
Issue 2 supporters gathered at the Out of the Closet thrift store and HIV testing clinic in Columbus. This location is part of the AIDS Healthcare Foundation, which was created by Michael Weinstein, sponsor of the Drug Price Relief Act. This is the second time his issue has failed. It first lost last year in California by 6 points. Weinstein will now take this issue to South Dakota and Washington, D.C. And Willard refutes the idea that the election results are a big win for drug companies.
No. I think the drug companies are in hiding. They stayed in the shadows during this entire campaign. They created a phony corporation so that they wouldn't even have to put their company's names on the checks that they wrote to fund this effort.
It wasn't just a matter of having money, according to Steiner. He believes Weinstein's issue failed in Ohio because he didn't gather any input from different interested parties.
Everybody involved in the healthcare system wants to participate in the decisions that are made in that healthcare system, and they probably should be. We've seen what happens in Washington. We've seen what happens in other places when the people that know the most aren't involved in the decisions.
This will likely go down as the most expensive ballot issue in Ohio history. The latest report showed the total amount of funds raised was more than $73 million. Andy Chow, Statehouse News Bureau.